Hello, Internet. Before we begin this episode, I do need to make a bit of a problematic announcement here. In this episode, I actually had issues with my audio. This happens occasionally we'll talk about that in a moment, but basically the audio is very, very quiet. So in editing, I'm going to crank that audio up really, really high for you to be able to hear what I'm saying. This, however, will lead to an overall loss of quality, and so this episode might not sound very good. And in case you're wondering why this happens, it's because the Microsoft Corporation believes that they get to decide what I do and don't get to install on my computer. So every time there's a Windows update or something like that, it removes my equalizer program. This is the only thing that makes my audio hearable because USB microphones on Microsoft are suppressed by Microsoft, and they are just a terrible, terrible corporation. So Microsoft, if you're listening to this, go f yourself, and everybody else, sorry about the episode. Let's just jump into it here. Hello, Internet. Welcome back to our Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead series. In the last episode, we cleared out a pool. This was our final obstacle to really getting access to the loot in the area. It was pretty easy, although some of them had tracked into the local bookstore that we wanted to loot, and then we did, in fact, loot the bookstore. We came away with a few books, not really anything too exceptional. The main one of interest would be the Japanese Swords book. We may be using that in the future to make a new weapon. On that note, I had lost my spear in a previous episode, but I did look in the footage and find where I had left it, so we'll pick that up in this one. And then finally, we ended the episode with me sleeping, and this took about 7 minutes, which is something else we should probably talk about in this episode. So everyone, welcome back. So immediately, I had left my spear on our driver's seat, which I was surprised by because I usually don't drop things on my driver's seat, but we had swapped to our gun to quickly deal with those coyotes and things we had seen. I mean, at this point, that was 3 or 4 episodes ago, so we left this quite a long time ago. So we're going to pick that back up so we have a weapon again, because we have been using our gun a lot, but we probably should be meleeing some of these creatures. On that note, I would like to look at our ammo stores, which I am not sure where I put that exactly. Let's look at our sorting menu. We would be looking for ammo. Is ammo its own thing? It is. So one to the north. So here we should have our 5.56 ammo, and there should be quite a lot of it, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,200 rounds laying around. We have 900 left, plus all the ones in the magazines. That's probably another like 120, 130. How many do we have here? Yeah, probably like another 100, 120 rounds. So we're right around 1,000 rounds of 5.56 plus the probably 120 we have in our inventory. So we are still good for ammo for quite a long time. I do like having a melee weapon though, so we can just deal with things in melee occasionally. And then the other thing I said we would talk about would be our sleep. So let's get something to eat while we talk about this, I suppose. Let's close everything up and flip on our aisle lights since it's nighttime. Make some more cooked meat. Of course, we're on an all meat diet at the moment. Cooked meat times 3. Yeah, so at the end of the last episode, I slept in my car, and it took about 7 real-life minutes for us to process our sleep. Now, people do talk about this sometimes. They'll come in and say things take a really long time. In fact, you can see our cooking is also going very, very slowly. And despite that, my computer is barely using any resources at all, which means it just seems peculiar because you would think Cataclysm, if it needed to process stuff, it would just crank up the amount of resources it's using from your computer, right? Well, most of the time when people experience these issues, it's a result of them being near underground locations that have a lot of monsters. Because keep in mind, every turn that gets processed, they have to process, where are the monsters? Are they moving? Are they attacking? What are they doing right now? So the first thing that made me think was that we may be near a lab, because we did say checking the subway station might lead us to an underground lab. So if that's true, we would be experiencing some slowdown because we would have all the monsters and items and everything that needs to be processed. However, I also just updated my game for the first time, to the most recent experimental after the major stable release, which we talked about in the last episode. So it's possible as well that it's just sort of some issues. Things aren't quite as optimized as they maybe could have been. People were talking. So prior to the release, I had actually built the dev branch. I had compiled it myself, which I hate compiling, and it took me I guess not that long, probably only like half an hour to figure out what I was doing. But for me, that technical stuff really hurts my brain, so I try not to do it. Is my inventory empty? It is. I definitely don't need a zipper bag. I don't know where that came from. we're going to explore these other bookstores. And I'm 90% sure we completely cleared this one, so we can just ignore that. And we're going to pop across the street here to this other one. I had compiled it myself, and when I compiled it myself, one of the devs had told me, like, hey, you know, it's cool that you want to compile it, you know, you want to see new stuff, whatever. You know, I was going to do my update show, like during the interim period before the stable was released. And they were like, sure, it's fine if you want to update and whatever, but you need to understand that it's really poorly optimized at the moment. So I didn't really know what that meant, but they said, you know, it crashes a lot and it's very difficult to keep it going. It's good enough that you can test some things, but you should not expect it to be a very playable experience. And then keep in mind, when we updated to the newest stable, the current experimental bumped up to be that previous dev branch. So maybe it's just that. Maybe it's just that the dev branch, you know, now is the main branch and it's just poorly optimized, or maybe some stuff is messed up. Okay, so I want to talk about this building here. We're in a bookstore. Is this a library or a bookstore? It's a library. The last one was a bookstore. And one of the beautiful things that has been updated about this game is that someone went into some of the libraries and they sorted the books by type. So this first thing that we were looking at, it had a lot of those self-esteem and economics books. Then as we moved up, it was mostly cookbooks, which is pretty cool. And then as we moved over here, it was electronics books. And then down here, it was some of these like fab and engineering books. So we're actually getting a lot of really good books out of this. Unfortunately, none of them have been the weapon or armor books that we kind of would hope for the most. But just the refactoring of libraries to where they make more sense and they actually have things laid out in a way that is sensible, I think that's so fantastic. I love that someone did this. And I'm not sure who did it, or I would call you out by name. It was probably Curse Twist or Whist or whatever name they prefer to go by, because they often do a lot of the map gen stuff, but I don't want to call that out and then be wrong, so I don't know. So, but it's very cool. And then we hit the novel section, obviously the fiction books, which you know, they just don't have a lot of value. I know some people read in the game for morale. I've never understood that. I think it's so much better just to consume items for morale, or smoke a cigarette or weed or whatever in the game, have a beer. You know, it's just so much easier than spending time because it requires no time consumption, right? If I drink a beer, my character basically instantly gets that benefit of having a beer in their system, whereas if I'm reading, I actually have to spend time reading the book. Okay, so here we found 3 very valuable books. Arms and Armor of Imperial China. This will have armor recipes primarily, is what we would be looking for in that. I don't think any good weapons, I mean, not that they're bad weapons, but I don't think any that we really care about are in there. Japanese armor making, same thing, very good armor book to have. And then we have the Historic Weaponsmith, which is the book I've been looking for, which contains most of the end game melee weapon materials. And we're going to retreat back to base to drop off all the books we found, because our inventory is full. So a very good library indeed to have found. And just based on what I've seen in my last few playthroughs, I think libraries are a higher priority than bookstores, just because they have been updated to kind of have that categorization to them, which I think really makes it just much better. Also, I keep forgetting to take cough syrup. I keep seeing myself cough and thinking in my brain like, oh, we'll eat cough syrup. Also, several episodes ago, we said we would work on our health stat by drinking tea and things like that. We've largely abandoned that, mostly because we took the gamma globulin shot, which boosted our health by 200. At this point, it's been 3 or 4 days. That has probably reduced to a point where it's not really beneficial anymore. So we should now start making pine needle tea and things to boost our health stat. So I think we will be refocusing on that if I can remember. And in fact, I see that we're satisfied. Is that the hunger status? I think it is. So I don't think we can eat one more thing, and we really should be eating every time we see that we can eat, which is another thing I keep forgetting to do. So let's drop some books. Oh, these are listed separately. That most likely means they're not identical. Put on my light here. So usually books stack. Let me look at my inventory. Do we have an example? Yeah, so here we have 3 copies of Antique Adornments, and you'll see that they all stack. Usually when a book does not stack, it means that they're actually different, even though they have the same title. So for instance, there's like a AAA book, I'm not sure what it's called off the top of my head. One is a very touristy book about like just meaningless stuff, and then the other one is actually like the anarchist cookbook that is kind of hidden away under the same name, but it has different recipes and things. So I'm curious what the two different crafts for beginners have, so we're going to read both of those and see the difference. Oh, nope, looks like they just did not stack for some reason. They look like they are identical. Why are you not stacking, I wonder? Neither of you is damaged. The recipes at a glance appear to be identical. Why didn't you stack, I wonder? Doesn't matter. I'm curious what a lobotomizer is. I have no idea what that is. It's brown, which means we don't have the skills required to learn that recipe, but it might show up in here anyway. Lobotomizer. Principles of a hand-forged collapsible tool that has 2 axe heads and a sharp shovel-like tip on one end. Can be used as a shovel, or you could chop some zombies with it instead. So it looks like one of these makeshift zombie weapons. You know, people add sometimes. Honestly, if you go to Google or YouTube and you're like, zombie weapon, there are dozens and dozens of videos of people who are like, I made this. It's like always like a 13-year-old kid who's like, I wrapped this piece of metal around a lump of wood and I use it as a zombie killing weapon. And it's a demonstration. And of course they have to like smash soda bottles full of water. That's like their, whole thing is that's clearly an accurate analog for a human skull, that bottle of water. So let's drop our books here. Hopefully they all fit in the cargo space. And then let's drop our duplicates because we just don't need them. Now I second guessed myself. Do we have glass blowing in here? It's a pretty good book to have. It is. So we'll drop these. We don't need them. We could piece them out for paper. Every time I bring up how useless duplicate books are, someone's like, yeah, but they're full of paper. And I can't really think of anything valuable I would ever need paper for. In fact, I'm not near my books, so I wouldn't see the recipes. What are you? I forgot to pulp you. Oh no, could have had a dog sneaking up on us in the dark. That would have been not so good. I'm gonna head back to this library, continue looting. We definitely left behind something on that tile. I don't remember what it was, but we'll have a look here. Yeah, so it just seems like these libraries super, super valuable. Now we already looted those. It was this one. I did not pick up the Bowyer's Buddy, which of course has the bow recipes. And then the Fletcher's Friend is the one that primarily has the ammo in them. And I'm going to pick up another copy of Weaponsmithing because I don't remember. In fact, I'm going to pick them all up because I don't remember which ones. I think I took all of them but that one, but Arms and Armor we already have. Historical Armor Smithing we don't have, so we'll take that. Japanese Armor Making, we have one in our inventory. We have all of these at this point. Still very good forge books to have, and then a couple novels here on the end. So yeah, we could harvest some of these for paper, and that's the other thing too. People say like, oh well, we all that excess paper, but the reality is that one book, like just give me something. What don't I care about? Eat your way to a new physique or whatever. If I were to butcher this, I can't see, so I wouldn't be able to see. It would give us like 200 paper or whatever. I mean, I'm sure it's based on like the book length or whatever, but it would give me so much paper that I would never need paper again for the rest of the game. And I can't think of anything you make out of paper other than paper armor. I know is a thing. Or like book armor. Do we have book armor? And like here, we just found 100 pieces of paper. How much do you really need paper in this game? It just doesn't really come up. What I would like to see, I think it's in the Long Dark, is that you can... Wait a minute. What game is that? You can make a journal and then use it for a morale boost. Do we have that in Cataclysm? Maybe it's Cataclysm I'm remembering? I don't think so. So we'll mark that library as explored. And we'll go drop off our books so we can clean out our inventory a little bit. It's nice to be looting again. Alright, we should probably talk about something a little bit more social instead of game focused. People comment sometimes, they're like, man, I wish you would talk more about the game as you play instead of talking about like your personal life and things like that. But then when I record a show where I do that, like I've been playing Circadian Dice, which if you haven't been watching, which a lot of you have not been watching based on the analytics, which is totally fine. It's not for everyone for sure. And it's not really my traditional content. But in that series, I basically, the whole video is just me talking about what I'm planning to do and making a move and whatever. It's kind of like if you ever watched someone play Slay the Spire or a roguelite, really of any sort. It's kind of hard when you're trying to think about your next move to talk about like personal things or anecdotes. So they tend to be very focused on the card game or whatever they're working on. And that's been my Circadian Dice series. And then when I edit the videos, they're short. They're like 10 to 25 minutes each. And I watch them back in editing and I'm like, this is kind of bad because all I'm doing is talking about the game and it's just sort of boring and not very fun. And I don't know if people want to watch this. And then I look at the analytics and I'm like, oh man, it's been out for 8 hours and I have 9 views. And it's like, oh my God, clearly people don't want to watch this, you know. Which is partially, partially the game being kind of something that's a little bit not my typical content, and then part of it is like I'm still not a great YouTuber, you know. I'm not like naive. I can recognize that. You're a boomer, which I was not paying attention. We should back off and shoot you instead of meleeing you, just because it will be a little bit easier. It's very bright out tonight. We can see very, very far in the darkness here. That gunshot is going to draw some attention. Oh, what's interesting is that it did not migrate to us, which is where the gunshot came from. It instead migrated to the boomer, which is where the boomer, obviously the boomer makes noise when it explodes. So that's interesting. We do see a couple ferals. Okay, people coming in now. We're getting horde music, just very quietly. I can hear the horde music. You look different. Why do you look different? Are you smeared in blood? Or is that just do you just have a darker skin tone? You're the same sprite. This one is also kind of smeared in blood. Maybe it's like filth, like, you know, feral humans, I can't imagine are, you know, taking care of themselves. But we see 2 of them. That's also a bit odd. They usually spawn in small groups, but usually more than 2. Like I usually see them 3 or 4. Well, I mean, I guess it depends where you are. In the parks, you see a lot of them, but anyway, we have a little cluster of things here that I would like to look at. I would like to see what's in a scrapyard. I imagine it's mostly scrap and not stuff we're interested in. I'd like to go to the laundromat to harvest some laundry baskets for plastic chunks, and then I would like to go to this bookstore. So we will shoot these enemies, which may just continue the cycle of drawing more attention to us as we fire more rounds, but we'll see. Anyway, so I've been playing Circadian Dice still. That's still going up on the channel. Not sure how long I'm going to play that series. I was playing it a lot in my free time, which is why I decided to make a series about it. Now I'm playing... what's that game called? Something... It's like Slay the Spire. It's a card game. It has the word ruins in it. I have to look it up. I'm going to look it up. Oh, it's called Vault of the Void. It's a... in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a Slay the Spire clone. There are some definite similarities in the effects and the card types and things like that. And honestly, it does not seem like a super... I'm not going to say it's a bad game, because it's not bad at all. It's just very limited in the build types. So like in Slay the Spire... I don't know how to talk about it for people. Most people have played Slay the Spire because it is just genuinely a pretty fantastic game. But like, let's say I'm playing Slay the Spire, they have 3 characters in that game, and all 3 characters have very different mechanics. So like, one is very, just kind of the melee guy. It has pretty standard like block and attack and things like that. Firefighter zombies? Really, you guys migrated all the way down here from the fire station? That's interesting. We do want to go up there anyway. So, you know, clearing out, any that we clear out now is just saving us time later, so... But, so like one character is very melee focused in Slay the Spire. It's like traditional block and attack cards, you know, they get AoE, they get, you know, stuff that builds up their defense and things like that. So like a very introductory type class, and then there's another character that's much more difficult. It's much more like, or not difficult, but more complex. So like instead of attacking and blocking directly, it does things like it'll put orbs over its head, and then each turn the orbs cycle and do whatever. Each orb has a different function. One like zaps the enemy, one, you know, increases your energy, etc., etc., etc. And it's a more complex mechanic. And then I'm playing this game, which I've already forgotten the name of, which I feel bad now. But its mechanics are much more simple and straightforward. They're not as nearly as complicated as like Slay the Spire can get. And then per character, it seems like there are much fewer build types, so it's a lot harder to play different characters. They always seem to be about the same. Man, we just killed so many enemies. We actually went through 2 magazines in our gun, clearing out this little area. I'm surprised because usually you don't see that much monster density just around. It's usually when I'm at a park or a pool that I see that kind of monster density. I mean, not that it's like obscene, but if you just look at a screen right now, there are a lot of corpses laying around. Now we begin the process of pulping. But yeah, I've been playing that. I like deck builders. You know, it's part of why I liked Circadian Dice to start with, is that I had not played a deck builder or whatever in a while, and that's much more simplistic as well. It's a dice builder, not a deck builder. But I'm kind of getting into that groove again where I want to play that. I did play a while back. I was playing Slay the Spire when I would output my videos, you know, because it takes a long time to export videos and stuff. And Slay the Spire is like, it's not super easy to run on the resources, you know. It does have a little bit of, honestly, I don't know why it requires so many resources. It's a pretty simplistic game, frankly, but you know, it's not the easiest thing to run. Like Cataclysm running while I'm exporting would be much better, but I was playing Slay the Spire some and it got me in that mindset, and I've been playing a lot of deck builders lately, so yeah. And we'll see some of that, you know, show up on the channel. I don't think it's super great. I don't think that I'm like the kind of person who does that. Like if you watch deck builder YouTubers, like people who spend all their time playing Magic the Gathering or Slay the Spire, they're highly analytical people. They play very perfectly, and then, you know, if you're not that person, you get a lot of toxic comments. Like I've seen other people play Slay the Spire, and then the community, or Monster Train, or any of those type of games, and then the community comes out of nowhere and is like, oh, he played this first when he should have played the third card first and then shifted to the second one to get a 3% increase in his performance. And it's like, geez, dude, like just chill out and watch the guy play the game, you know. So I don't know that I'm super interested in being a deck builder type guy on the channel, but we might have some of that show up here over the next oh yeah, so this is a problem as well. We haven't talked about this. I should have maybe made a video about this. They did change it to where, okay, so it's a little complicated. So basically in Cataclysm, we've always had very distinct weapons. All of our guns are based on real life guns. Well, most of them. I guess we do have some fantasy guns, but most of them are built around real life guns, so they get real life gun names. So for instance, here I have what is an M4 assault rifle. However, they changed it recently to add the option for people to disable that, and instead of using real world gun names, because some people do dislike that and get overwhelmed by the many different guns, and because in Cataclysm our guns are pretty close to identical, they function very similarly. The main difference is weapon type, like rifle versus SMG versus pistol, and then the other major difference would be the ammunition type, right? By caliber, the guns are very different. However, within those categories, guns are very similar. So my M4, pretty much identical to the SIG 5.52. They use the same ammo, they're the same type of weapon, they're both rifles, assault rifles, you know, etc., etc. So they added the option to make these weapons simplified. So instead of having gun names that are, you know, specifically what they are, like mine would be the M4A1 assault rifle or whatever it's called, they are now reduced to a more generic term. Now you can disable this, which is what we're going to do, because I do like seeing the options for seeing the actual gun names. That would probably be an interface, and I have no idea. Okay, gun brand names. Show brand names for guns instead of generic functional names. So M4A1 or H&K 416A5 instead of NATO assault rifle. So we're going to enable that. Add ammo to weapon and magazine names. What is this about? If true, the default ammo is added to the weapon and magazine names. For example, the Mosin, which I've still never learned how to say Mosin. People say it about 100 different ways. Becomes, so it just displays the ammunition type. We can leave that on, sure. I mean, we always end up using something that uses the traditional Stanag mags anyway. So here we got our M4 back. Yeah, that's something to be aware of in case you update your game. Someone said, oh, it's, you know, disabled by default. Obviously, that's not true because it swapped us from our M4 to the NATO assault rifle. I didn't notice that in a previous episode. We should have talked about that. Might get a few questions about that, but I think it's fine. Give me my spear. And yeah, so that's a new option. A lot of people are upset about it. I don't really see a reason to be upset about it. You can just turn it off, you know, and then for people who want that, then they now have that option. So basically, it doesn't hurt you in any way, and it adds the ability to disable that for people who get overwhelmed by those sort of things. So to me, it just seems like a lot of upside. So I don't really understand why people are so angry about that when you can just turn it off and move on with your day. So we talked about deck builders. What else can we talk? Oh, you know, I never gave you an update on my wasp situation. We talked about that in a previous episode. I had found a small wasp nest on my balcony at the window where my AC is, which I put a picture of it. I don't know if it was a good picture. I don't really remember. Oh, I keep forgetting to take cough syrup. We really need to do that. But anyway, and I had bought some foam or foaming spray, and I was going to spray the wasp nest and get rid of them. But I was worried about, like, oh, it's going to trickle down to my dogs and blah, 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 etc. And then when I went out and looked, I actually found a second nest, and it was, like, in the window frame between, like, the screen and the glass panel that goes, you know, like your window when you put your window up. Because obviously I have the screen up because I have my air conditioner in the window. And I was like, oh, great, you know, now I have 2 wasp nests. And the second one, the first one was very, very tiny, probably smaller than my thumb. And then the second one was like 3 or 4 times bigger than that. Really also not very big, but it was bigger than the first one, and there were quite a lot of wasps that were congregating around it. So I was all nervous, and I'd never done this before, and I ended up going out. Is there really no wash basket in this whole freaking place? Like, that's the whole reason I came here. How do you have a laundromat without having a wash basket? I guess people keep them in their homes primarily, and these are just shopping carts. So no plastic for me, and of course we don't care about the clothing at all, so we'll just move on here. No reason to linger. Check the scrapyard. I am curious. Someone did say that we now have rusty zombies that have metal in them, like they have metal embedded in their flesh, which I think they're called rust zombies, which I don't think I've seen them. They might be from a mod, I'm not sure. Huge boomer. I mean, the scrapyard's not going to have anything. I do like that they have appliances. That is something you very commonly find in a scrapyard. You'll find stoves and old washers and things. So I do think it's cool that they just, you know, put some of those furniture tiles here. Also interesting that they added vending machines. Not really something I traditionally think of in a scrapyard, but I suppose they got to go somewhere, and they are just chock full of metal that you could salvage. I don't think we need to go there. I just don't see a huge value in that. We do want to push south to this bookstore. Again, if we start popping off rounds, we're kind of in an area we've not explored before, so it would draw a lot of enemies. You know, if we're going to explore town, we might as well pop up and see if maybe this NPC wants to join us. We should look into that in the near future. Yeah, so let's fall back here. I guess we'll just head south the back way. We do see a shocker. Oh, your sprite is way better than the other one I saw. Last time we saw a shocker, it had the same sprite as the Zapper Zombie. Looks like maybe that was updated as well. When I updated my game to the newest version, it would also install the most recent Ultica update. So, looks like they got their own sprite. Very similar. Is that the same as the Zapper Zombie? Maybe it is, and it's just the female variant where it's wearing a dress. Or not necessarily female, but coded as female by having them in a dress and what look like heels. Wear whatever you want, I'm not judging you. So let's move south here and try to swing around to the bookstore from the other side, and we probably will end up having to shoot. We could just melee that boomer. I mean, it's just going to cover us in bile, make us a little nauseous. And we can't do that because this bloater zombie we're going to have to shoot. Alright, so we're going to draw a lot more enemies here. See what we got behind us. Just a couple regular zombies. I can melee you at least. But anyway, I went out one night. I'm super nervous. I'd never done it before. Was scared it would leak down and maybe hurt my dogs or something. So I put down a bunch of newspaper all over the place. I couldn't find a sheet of plywood. Plywood is very expensive at the moment, which probably most of you don't care about. But if anyone's doing home renovations, you know the price of plywood at the moment is about triple what it was a couple months ago. But anyway, put some newspaper down, gave it a couple squirts, and I was super nervous. I was like, oh man, online it says to like put on long sleeve shirts and jeans to make sure the wasps can't get you, and be super careful and blah blah blah. And I was like, okay. So I put on jeans and a long shirt and put on a mask because I was like, oh, they're super toxic. I don't want to get sick from breathing something in. And then literally I sprayed it. It took me about 18 seconds. There were no wasps anywhere near me. How are you still grabbing me? No wasps came near me. It was like sunset, so they weren't even around. Sprayed them and then came back in the house, and that was it. And then a few hours later I picked up the newspaper I had used to catch any like drippage or anything. And very simple, very straightforward, not at all dangerous, not at all scary, very easy. Like I was way in my head about it, like, oh, I have to do this right or I'm gonna screw something up or the dog will get sick. But it took me like literally less than a minute, and was really not a big deal at all. And then the next day I went out there, and sure enough, the nest is kind of shriveled up, and there's a whole bunch of dead wasps all over the place. So obviously it worked, and I have not seen them come back. So I've been checking on it, because it's in the window frame. I can't cut it down and like throw it away, because I just can't get access to it. But I've been checking on it, and no follow-up wasp. So pretty easy. Please see me. Oh no, coffee syrup cannot fit into pocket, item is too big. So that is possibly, it was when we took a step, so it's possible it's in one of these buildings that just got loaded in, and that's why it gave us that pop-up. We're getting the horde music. I mean, there's a couple boomers. I guess we'll shoot you. I really didn't want to. Actually, we should call the episode. Alright. Well, everybody, thanks for watching. I'll be back with more Cataclysm in the near future, and we'll tackle these other zombies. In fact, we should go back to base and get some cough syrup and probably eat something, but we'll get that sorted in the next episode. For now, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to me ramble, and I'll be back with more in the near future, so I'll see you next time.